what I thought we would do is have a little bit of fun today. I am a scientist by profession. I think all of you do science in some shape and form, and I know that there are a lot of young and older students with us today. Hopefully it will give you a different perspective of science. But I actually want to start us off somewhere to give you some context for this question we're going to ask today. And I will tell you two short stories today. The context I want to give you is this. What are the two things you can be very sure of in this lifetime? It's perhaps a very, very famous quote. What are two things you can be sure of in life? Death and taxes. Death and taxes. One thing you can be very sure of is you will die. One day you will die, okay? And one day you'll also have to pay taxes. I want to focus on the first one, the death one, because that excites me most, okay? Now, one thing we know when we look at Earth's geological history is we know things have died. In fact, they've gone extinct. So after they've died as a species, they are never ever to be seen again. We know this from Earth's geological history. Throughout Earth's geological history, we know that extinction has occurred, mass extinctions have occurred for at least 5 times. Now I'm wondering if one of you can tell me how we found that out in the first place. How do we know things that once roamed the Earth are no longer with us? In fact, they went extinct millions of years ago. What information do we use to figure that out? Anyone knows? Anyone knows? Come on, you know this? Don't be shy. There are no wrong answers in my classroom. What?
We don't see them anymore.
You don't see them anymore, but then how do we know what they look like? The fossils. So we look at the fossil record to know, embedded in Earth, what some of these structures might have looked like, and then the very fact that we don't have these things today, and we can carbon date a lot of these things. Okay, great, so that's one. Now, the problem we have with us in this lifetime is that most scientists agree that we are facing the 6th mass extinction. We are losing our biodiversity at an alarming rate. Never ever has there been a time in Earth's history and human history that we have lost species at the rate at which we're losing them today. Now, we cannot save them all, but it's also important to appreciate that biodiversity has a lot of value. So today we will be learning about some biodiversity and how scientists really rely on biodiversity to solve a lot of global challenges. Okay, so biodiversity is cool, and one reason, and this is for those of you that don't really like science but really like art, a lot of art is also inspired by biodiversity, right? So how many of you play Pokemon? None of you, you have no life, you're not cool like I am. Okay, so some of you play Pokemon, very, very happy. Do you know the next version that's coming out, right, in November? So Violet and Scarlet. Did you know that last night there were leaks on the final evolution of the 3 starters? So you might be interested in go looking that up when you get home. Anyway, many of you are probably familiar with the most iconic of the Pokemon, Pikachu, described as an electric mouse, so probably inspired when a mouse got zapped by this little trap over here. But there are thousands of cartoon characters that have been inspired by organisms in the natural world. So let's have an exploration of some of them. Okay, do you know what Pokemon this one is? Huh? You don't know, and that's fine, but what you can tell me very, very clearly is this is obviously a Pokemon that's been inspired by an actual animal, and that's obvious. This is inspired by a butterfly. Now, this is the Queen Alexander butterfly. It's the world's largest butterfly species, and also a species that we will lose. It will go extinct in the wild over the next 20 years. It's the largest species of butterfly. You find it in the Pacific region. And on the black market, a specimen like this will fetch about $14,000 US. So it's worth a lot of money, and there are a lot of people that poach this species to preserve it. Those of you that play Animal Crossing, you will know that this is one of the butterflies you can catch as well. So I'm going to give you 1 minute now. I want you to talk to your friends. And over the next minute, I'd like for you to look at the living animal, which has inspired the Pokemon, and I'd like you to start comparing the two. Discuss how they are similar, but also discuss how they are different. Okay, 1 minute, chat with your friends. Okay, now I'm looking for some bright sparks, and this is where I start giving out some prizes, okay? Because your generation, you won't do anything unless you're incentivized, okay? So I've got stuff for you if you participate. Okay, so let's talk about similarities. Who wants to go first? What did you discuss?
They got wings.
Yes.
And they have like the
Antennae? Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
And then they,
Excellent.
but the head. And
It's
two
also
eyes.
similar. Very good. And they've got a pair of eyes. So those are very good similarities. You know, both both can fly, right? They have some ability to do that. They're supported to do that by wings. Both of them have a pair of antennae up the top. Does anybody know what antennae are used for?
To signal like the other to go migrate.
So antennae are actually not used for signaling. Okay, you deserve a little sticker first. Now antennae are not used for signaling. I'll tell you. Don't. Oh, you're gonna put it on your. These are limited edition stickers. Okay, I'm very happy that you are appreciating it. Okay, excellent. Now antennae are the equivalent of your nose, right? So you will find a lot of receptors. In fact, they are so sensitive that a lot of insects can actually detect chemicals in the air in really, really small proportions. So these are chemosensory structures, right? They help the insect smell. Now, those are all similarities. They have a visual system. Of course, they rely on vision, so they've got eyes. Okay, now let's talk about differences. So what have you discussed in terms of differences? And someone else can go over here.
The colors are different.
Colors are different. Anything else?
The wing, the shape of the wing.
Wing shape and pattern are different. Are there more obvious differences?
The flying thing has like larger eyes.
So the size of the eye. Let's not talk about anything we've already discussed. There are more obvious differences. You take that first, and then you go.
The Pokemon thing.
Yes.
Like legs.
The Pokemon, the legs. Okay.
It has bigger legs.
It's got bigger legs.
And it has like tiny arms.
It's got tiny arms. Okay.
The normal one has like thinner arms and longer.
Thinner arms and longer arms, okay, that's for you. Now, you've learned this in primary school. You learned some rules about natural systems and biology, and you've learned that all insects are categorized as insects if they possess how many legs? 6, right? So you've learned this, right? All insects have 6 legs and how many body parts? 3, okay. So you start seeing some differences, right? Because in the Pokemon, do you have 6 legs? No. Do you have 3 body parts? No, not in this Pokemon, only 2, right? Okay, now there's another big thing that is not obvious in the photo, and it's got to do with another structure here. There's another big difference. Thinking about what you know about butterflies in food acquisition. How do they acquire food? And what structure is associated with that? So you are correct, they drink nectar, and so in butterflies, what do you expect to see? A proboscis, which is a drinking straw. Brilliant, very, very good. So what do you see in the Pokemon? Does it have a proboscis? It does not. It has these teeth. It's got mouth parts with teeth in it. And I know it's not clear, but those of you that know the Pokemon will know. If butterflies have teeth, I don't think you'd be very fond of them. I don't think so. Okay? Now, there's one thing, if there's one thing you must take away from me today, it's this, right? You learn all these rules in school. There are always exceptions to rules. There are always exceptions to rules. A while ago you told me all insects have 6 legs. But check this species out. What has it got? 4. Right? So this is a monarch butterfly. It's a very, very cosmopolitan butterfly. And by that we mean it's found in virtually every continent in the globe. But in the US, this is a species that migrates. And so it's decided to forego 1 extra pair of legs to keep itself as light as possible, because the lighter you are, the further you fly, or the less energy it takes for you to migrate. So this is a migratory butterfly. Now remember, there are always exceptions to rules. And a while ago we also said, you expect to see a mouth part suitable to the food, the type of food that you acquire. Butterflies rely on a liquid food source, nectar, right? So they have a straw that helps them acquire that nectar. But there are always exceptions to rules. This is another butterfly. Does it have a drinking straw? No, it doesn't, right? It looks ferocious. This is an ancestral type of butterfly that consumes pollen. Pollen is solid packets of protein in flowers. So this one feeds on a solid food source rather than a liquid food source. So there are always exceptions to rules. So we ask ourselves the question now, do you think a Pokemon like this is biologically possible? Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Except
without superpower.
without what? Without superpowers. Oh yes, but that would be boring. Right? Okay, excellent. Let's learn a little bit more about butterflies. What fascinates you about this one? The color. The color. So you can see a bright blue in this particular species, and I think you'll be surprised when I tell you that despite this butterfly being blue in color, it produces no pigment. It doesn't actually produce any blue color, right? If you look at your skin color, your hair color, your eye color, there's pigment inside your cells. So proteins that have color. This butterfly is blue, yet it produces no blue pigment. And it's got everything to do with the structure of the wing. Now let's have a look at that. Now don't go and kill a butterfly just to do this, okay? But if you find a dead butterfly, pick it up, take it to your biology teacher, and they'll let you have a look at it under the microscope. Okay? Now, if you look at a butterfly's wing structure under a microscope, you will find that what might surprise you is that those are actually scales. There are lots and lots of scales that overlap each other. Okay? Now, if we take out one of those scales and zoom in, right, we're getting to a really, really deep resolution here. You'll notice that the structural complexity of each scale is just crazy, so intricate. Okay, so we need to magnify this. Okay, you probably could see something like that under your microscope at school. Okay, but you need a much more powerful microscope to get down here. Now you are familiar with this unit of measure, yes? Okay, what are we going down to here? Micrometers. So we're down to a really, really small resolution, and notice the structures on the butterfly scale look like these little Christmas trees. Okay, how do they work? Now, those of you that do physics will know that a light travels as a particle, and a light particle, we oftentimes say it travels in a straight line. Okay, actually it doesn't, but that's all right. You can learn that at university. Okay, so imagine a light particle is traveling in a straight line. Okay, what happens? What happens when it hits one of these structures? What's going to happen to that particle? It will need to move somewhere. It will need to bounce off the structure in some shape and form. So what happens to this particle when it, say, hits this? It might bounce here, and it might bounce here, and it might bounce here, and it might bounce here. And what that tells you about these tiny little structures in a butterfly's wing is that they can actually do what with the light? They can trap light. And as they move these structures up and down, they can actually decide how much of the light bounces off and into your eye and how much doesn't. So this is called structural color. And we are using this idea of butterfly wings inspired from nature and putting that into your everyday devices. How many of you know what a Kindle is? Have you seen a Kindle before? Some of your parents probably have one, and they're reading books off a Kindle. Now, a Kindle's screen, the structures in this screen are like that, okay? And they adjust to reveal the black color or not, okay? So that's why when you read off the screen of a Kindle, it's like reading off a page of a book. It can be the brightest day, it can be the darkest night. When you're reading off a Kindle, it's as if you're reading off the page of a book, because that screen utilizes structures for color. Can you do this with your smartphone? On a very bright day like this outside, when you go out there to check on your phones, I don't know if you're allowed to, but let's say you do it, what happens? There's a glare, right? You can't really see very well on a very bright day. That's because that's glass. In fact, it's layer upon layer of glass. So it's a composition of many different types of glass to get you your smartphone screens. It's actually a terrible and very unsustainable way to create composite glass, because it requires a lot of rare metals and rare minerals from the earth. So the next generation smartphones you can thank butterflies for. I promise you, in about 5 to 6 years, people will get this right. In about 5 to 6 years, your next generation smartphones, the screen will be like a Kindle. Now it's trying to figure out which structures might be able to be manipulated for which colors and which spectrum of colors. So in the future, you can expect smartphones to be multiple layers of nanostructures, okay, that we can code for, that they adjust and then you get a colored screen, because I don't think you'll be too happy with a black and white phone, yeah? Okay, so how cool is that? Very, very exciting, you know, that's what science and technologists and engineers and mathematicians come together to do. Cool, cool stuff. Okay, one more story for you. What's this? What's this one? You know? What's this name of this Pokemon? No, it doesn't start with an M. It's a Wooper. It's a Wooper, you see? This is a very learned friend over here. Now, I'm wondering though, if any of you can tell me, what is the living animal that might have inspired this Pokemon?
A frog or a squirrel?
A frog? No? Yeah? It is an axolotl. Have any of you seen an axolotl before? Ah, it's so cute, right? So this is an axolotl, right? And it inspired that Wooper. We will do the discussion very shortly, but I have a story for you. So axolotls, like our friend has mentioned up here in the front, axolotls are amphibians. They are similar to your frogs and toads. And so you know something about the life cycle of your frogs and toads. There will be an aquatic life stage when they're immature, where they're in the water as tadpoles, and then eventually they can terrestrialize. Eventually they can come onto land as adults. Same thing applies here for axolotls. Okay, now I have a story for you, because axolotls are, in fact, in Australia, you can keep them as pets. Okay, in Thailand also, because in Thailand you can keep anything as a pet. Okay, but in Australia, you can keep this as a pet without a permit. Okay, so Dr. G had some axolotls. Okay, and my axolotls also over one summer got a bit excited. Okay, and as you know, because there are some young members in the audience, I don't want to go into too much detail. Okay, but you know, you can see some tiny little tadpoles in the eggs there. Slowly, it was really cool because I could see embryonic development. I could witness embryonic development happening right before my eyes. However, I didn't know what I was doing, so unfortunately, that's why I said Dr. G had axolotls because I lost them all. Now I tell you, is it a sad story? Are you sad that I lost all my axolotls?
Yes.
Let me tell you an even sadder story. Okay, let me tell you an even sadder story. This is a very, very sad story. Now, what happens when you don't know what you're doing? So I didn't know how to breed my axolotls properly. So what do? So you go to Google, right? You ask Google how to breed axolotls. So this is a very sad story, because when you Google how to breed axolotls, you get how to breed axolotls in my Now this is a very sad story. Okay. Anyway, okay, so that is the living animal. That is the living animal, and this is the Pokemon. You have 1 minute now to chat with your friends again. You are talking about similarities and differences. Off you go.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's abbreviated.
So similarities. Anybody want to tell us some similarities before I let your friend up the front here?
They can both be found in my two favorite video games.
They can be both found in your two favorite video games. Okay, very good. It's also the problem with your generation. Okay, anyway, how about we stay on you and you tell me another similarity that has nothing to do with video games. Come on, just make a...
I don't know. I actually lied about Pokemon. Can that thing go underwater and online?
Yeah. These would all be aquatic, and that's great. And this is actually a very important bit that we will talk about shortly. It's the fact that both of them have an aquatic lifestyle. That's very, very important to what I'm about to talk to you about. Okay, excellent. But let's keep on similarities. Anyone else? Over here? Oh, they have these things. Okay, so we don't have to look very far to figure out what they actually are used for and then what we would name those structures. Now, if you look at the living animal, it also has these structures that come off the side of the heads. What you also notice is that within each of these larger structures, you have lots of these frilly structures. Okay? You should be making two critical observations. One, the very fact that it's got lots and lots of these structures should tell you that the surface area is very high. There's a lot of surface area here. The second critical observation you should be making is that running through all of these structures are blood vessels. Blood vessels, veins, arteries, so on and so forth. So what might you need lots of surface area and blood to do? Breathe. Brilliant. So these are respiratory structures. Gaseous exchange occurs through them, right? And so because they're used for respiration and they're underwater, we call them gills. Okay, so these are gills. Very good. Okay, so the similarity here is that they have gills. Excellent. Anything else? There's one very obvious one. Yes? What do you want to say?
That the Pokemon doesn't have any arms.
It doesn't have it. No, we're still on similarities, but that certainly is a difference. Similarities, I'm after one more.
The eyes.
Nothing to do with the eyes, but on the
tail.
nothing to do with the tail.
Has a really cool smiley face.
It's got a really cool smile. Or more correctly, it's got a disproportionately large mouth, like some of your friends. Okay? It's got a really big mouth. Really big mouth. So it's starting to think. It's starting to think about what is the advantage of a really big mouth. Eating, exactly. The larger your mouth, the more food you can fit in. So if we think about food acquisition, you might like to know that this is actually a species that occupies habitat that is very, very low in resources. In other words, you maximize your nutrition by having a really large mouth because then you can fit whatever you want in it. So if you have a tiny little mosquito larvae, you'll eat it. You have a little fish swim by, you'll eat it. You have another axolotl walking by, you'll eat it. You should never put two axolotls in the same tank because when they get hungry, one will eat the other. Okay, they will eat whatever that fits into their mouth. Excellent. Okay, talking about differences now. I'm looking for the biggest difference. Very obvious. It's the biggest difference you can find. What do you think? Yes, very good. Because you see the Pokemon can receive Wi-Fi. It's a big difference. No, I'm just kidding. Now, there are some differences that some of you have already mentioned. But one that should really strike you is orientation. Now, what I mean by that is that you notice that the Pokemon can stand upright, like us. It can stand upright like us. The living animal, axolotls, cannot do that. They are always horizontal to the ground, okay? So they cannot stand upright. So let's think a little bit more about this. Now, those clues will lie when we look at the life cycle, right? So notice that this is the aquatic stage, right, where they're underwater. Eventually they'll lose their gills, their external gills, because they develop internal lungs, and then they can terrestrialize, meaning to say they can come onto land and become adults, okay? But notice that the orientation of their body is always flat to the ground, but the Pokemon are always drawn standing upright. Now, in order to figure out whether an animal can stand upright or not, which skeletal structure do you want to look at?
The bone.
Which bone?
The backbone.
The backbone. Excellent. The spine, the spinal column, the vertebral column. So axolotls are vertebrates. We are also vertebrates and we have a backbone. But if you look very carefully at our vertebral column and that of the animal, there are very obvious differences here. Now, in your biology lab, you probably have a human skeleton, yes? Okay, and you would have seen before in the model, and if you look at your vertebral column, you can tell me that you can see each vertebrae interconnected with each other, yes? Right? If you look at the human condition, right, every vertebrae is interconnected with the other. We call that an articulated backbone, okay? And what's nice about having an articulated backbone, can you bend from side to side? That's because you have an articulated backbone. Can you bend down and touch your toes? No. That's because you cannot. I also cannot, but most of you can. Okay? That's because you have an articulated backbone, right? Can you twerk? That's because you have an articulated backbone. Okay? So these are all things you can do because your backbone is flexible. Okay, looking here though. Do we see an articulated backbone in an axolotl? You do not. In fact, we have in the amphibian condition what we describe as a fused backbone. It's a fused backbone. It's not a backbone that offers a lot of flexibility. or rigidity. So can this animal stand upright?
No.
It actually cannot. But why? It's never needed to stand upright. And my friend at the back there is correct in reminding us that we're underwater. And when you're underwater, you don't experience the effect of gravity. Exactly. Right? Gravitational effects are negligible underwater. Okay? And so it's not an animal that's ever needed to stand upright to deal with that. Okay? So do you think something like the axolotl, the whooper, is biologically possible? Probably not. It can never stand upright. Okay, I think we should learn a little bit more about axolotls. They're very, very cool. Okay, this one here. Anything unusual? Anything unusual? Do you notice that these arms are fully developed? And then these arms, little stumpy arms over here. What's happened?
They try to stand forward.
Remember a while ago I told you, never ever put two axolotls in the same tank. Because if they get hungry, one will eat the other. What's happened here is that this guy has lost this arm to another axolotl. But what can they do? They can regenerate their limbs. So it takes time, but if you cut off a bit of the arm, you will see over time that the limbs are able to regenerate. How cool is that? Okay? So it's important to realize what actually happens. So when you cut open and expose a wound in the axolotl, they actually activate a particular cell type. And you might have learned this before, they're called stem cells. And stem cells have the ability to differentiate into every other cell type. And in doing so, regenerate the limb of an axolotl. Now, what might excite you is, how did we find this out in the first place? How did we know stem cells existed, right? Yes, they are in our bodies, but how did we find out about them, right, is what I'm asking. We actually also rely on other animals to help us figure this out, right? This is a jellyfish. This is no ordinary jellyfish. It is a deep sea jellyfish. So you find it deep in the depths of the ocean, where what isn't present? Light isn't present. And so a lot of animals in the deep sea have had to adapt to a life in darkness, and many of them have the ability to produce proteins that glow. They can produce their own light. And in a deep sea jellyfish, we have found a protein that glows a bright green. What we also found is not just this protein, but the genetic information that produces this protein. Okay, so those of you that eventually do biology at year 12, you will learn that your DNA sequences can come together in a very specific combination to produce very specific products. Okay, so we know exactly the genetic sequence that produces this, and we can incorporate it into a lot of other organisms. We can put it in the soil, and we can monitor by the glowing green where nutrients go up into a plant, right? You can see the bits of the plant glowing green. Now we know where the nutrients have gone. We can look at it in bacteria. We can introduce this gene into a bacteria and then grow the bacteria and can do bacteria art, okay? And it's glowing, so we know that the bacteria has successfully taken up those genes or successfully taken up those glowing proteins. In more applied research, we use animal models like mice to figure out where, say, cancerous tissues are. We can tag cancer cells with that green fluorescent protein. So the bits that glow tell us where the cancers are manifesting. Okay? And I know you're thinking, oh, this is very inhumane. But we could do this on another human, and that's more inhumane. Okay? So a few lives for the greater good. Okay, anyway, so on the stem cells, coming back to stem cells, the reason why we found out that axolotls do so well with regeneration and recovery is because of this green fluorescent protein. We're able to take this protein and tag it onto the stem cells of the axolotl. Okay, I'll say this again. So we can take this green protein, tag it to the stem cells of an axolotl, and then can you hypothesize which parts of the axolotl glow?
Your
The arms, okay, anything else?
leg.
Guess what? the entire animal glows. What does that tell you?
The cancer.
That tells you that virtually every tissue in this animal contains stem cells. Stem cells. Stem cells. We're on the stem cells now. So if you chop off a leg, it'll grow back. If you chop off the tail, it'll grow back. You chop off a gill, it'll grow back. If you chop off the head, you know what happens. Okay. So anyway, that's how we figured out that something like an axolotl, is so full of stem cells, and we've actually used them as animal models to learn more about stem cell therapy. Okay? Because heart disease is a great example. Wouldn't it be nice if we, now our heart has no stem cells, but wouldn't it be nice if we can take our own stem cells, right, and then introduce it to a diseased part of your heart, and then it does the repair for you? Wouldn't that be nice? Okay. Now I want you to look at each other. Look very deeply into your friend's eyes. Look very, very deeply into your friend's eyes as I reveal this fact to you. Ready? Okay. Ready? Listen carefully. One in three of us will die of a cardiovascular disease. So who's it gonna be? 1 in 3. Okay? So I'm sure you know this, right? I can promise you, you have at least one family member that has tragically suffered a heart attack. At least. Your family is very small. Okay? I promise you that 1 in 3 people die of a cardiovascular disease. And then wouldn't it be nice if we can use stem cell therapy to reduce those risks? That would be really cool. Guess what? We already can. This is a fully functional heart made with nothing but stem cells. So it's a fully functional heart that we have used stem cells to create. However, this is a rat's heart. Okay? The next step is the human heart. And that's research that is being done at my university. So it's really, really quite cool, right? The new age way in which we can use stem cell therapy. Okay, regeneration of cardiovascular tissues. Excellent, wonderful. Okay, essentially that's all the stories I wanted to tell you today. In the last few minutes we can open to the floor in case you have any other questions. But maybe I wanted to just share a few more things with you before I open to questions, okay? I don't want to take up too much of your time. Now, there probably are many of you study science at school. I think it goes without saying that you can see the value in science. I'm sure you can see the value in science. But maybe you are thinking about, do I want to dedicate my entire career to it? Right? So you're thinking about, should I study science at uni, or is there something better for me, or something that pays better? So these might be some of your questions, right? Are there jobs in science, right? Or you might be wondering, if I become a scientist, do I get paid well, right? And maybe you're asking, why should I study science? You know what? These are the wrong questions to be asking. The questions you should be asking are these. You shouldn't be asking whether or not there are jobs in science. You should be asking in whether or not you've got the skills for the jobs that don't currently exist. Right? There are many, many jobs that still happen today that will disappear, largely due to automation, largely moving to a society that we rely on big data. Okay, so have you got the skills for jobs that don't currently exist? That's the question you should be asking. And are you taking full advantage of your time at school to pick up as much of those skills? That's what you should be asking. You shouldn't be asking about whether a science job pays well. In fact, you shouldn't be asking about whether any job pays well. What you should be asking is whether or not you will end up in a career that can help you grow. Is that a career that's sustainable? Is that a career that's secure and will give you job security? That's the question you should be asking. Okay, or are you choosing a career that is only going to be valid for the next 5 years? Is what you should be thinking about. Now, you shouldn't be asking about whether you should study science. You should be asking about whether or not, what type of contribution you want to make to this planet. Do you want to be part of the solution, and how? I'm sure there are a handful of you that maybe want to become doctors. That's great. They'll make a positive impact on your community. But remember, doctors only treat people. Doctors don't cure diseases. Scientists do. Because scientists are the ones that are developing and designing the drugs, not doctors. Doctors don't do that. So thinking about what kind of contribution you want to make, okay? So I hope it gives you some idea about the questions you should be asking as you move on through the remainder of your high school, and the questions you should be asking in preparation for deciding what next in terms of university. I actually don't really care which university you go to, but I do care that you go to a university. It's really important, right? You get a lot out of a university education, wherever that might be. So please make sure that you end up in one. Okay, before I take questions, I'll just show you a very, very short and quick video to introduce where I'm come from. Okay, of course, it would be nice if I could bring you all over to Queensland with me, but I cannot do that, but I can bring Queensland to you in a short video. Okay, so welcome to the University of Queensland.
Come around me, do I get my money back?
Say again. Say again. Yep.
I go and no bird feather come fly around me.
If you go and you don't have those things flying around you, do you get your money back? I'm afraid not. Yeah. There's no money back guarantee. I'm sorry. Okay. Over here. So I think for the rest of the time there are some questions, and I do owe some of you stickers, so come and claim them as you leave later if you think you deserve them. And I said they're limited edition, right? Because Dr. G is not just a scientist. I'm also an artist, so the stickers are actually my artwork. You won't find them anywhere else. You won't find them anywhere else in the world. Okay, they'll be worth a lot of money after I die. Okay, all right. Okay, you have a question.
Doesn't scientists also treat people because they create medicine?
That's right. So they do treat people. They absolutely do. Of course, it's a doctor that the doctors, of course, diagnose the illness to begin with. Yeah, but what I was saying is that a lot of the work that goes behind actually creating vaccines and drugs are not done by doctors, right? Those are jobs done by scientists and biochemists and drug designers. Yeah, excellent. Okay, any other questions from you all? Any other questions? Yes?
So you are a scientist at Queensland University?
I am a scientist at UQ. I teach at UQ. Yeah. So I didn't share that story, but I'm an entomologist. Anybody knows what that is? Yeah, so I study insects, right? So I specialize in pest insects that attack the crops that we eat, and a lot of my research is in that space. Yeah, I'll get his question first.
You said you study insects, right?
I do.
Can you find a way to get rid of cockroaches, please?
I don't love getting rid of cockroaches. I would not do that. I would not do that because cockroaches, as in their body plan, cockroaches have been around for a really, really, really long time. Cockroaches predate us, right? They have more rights to be on Earth than we as a species.
They've been around for too long.
They've been around for too long. I tell you why I wouldn't kill them. I wouldn't kill them because it's just nice to marvel at a system that it is a body plan and a lifestyle that has been so successful. Cockroaches are everywhere in every environment and can still survive with limited resources. They are so successful as a species, and there's more we can learn from them. Now, if you want to get rid of cockroaches at home, I would just keep your house clean.
They're so successful, they make me scream and run.
Okay, you had a question for me.
I was gonna ask about cockroaches.
About cockroaches?
But.
Okay, why? Okay, of all insects to eliminate, why wouldn't you eliminate mosquitoes?
Yeah, I was gonna ask next.
Exactly, right? If you had one insect you could get rid of, why would it be cockroaches? It should be mosquitoes.
Oh.
Yes, yes, and the way we're doing that, I can tell you. Of course, you can kill them with harmful insecticides, but that's a problem, right? There's no amount of insecticides that will work, and the problem, what you don't want, is for an insect to build resistance, right? Where they become immune to the toxic effects of the insecticide. So that's a problem. The way in which we are controlling mosquitoes in this day and age is this. We are using a bacteria. There is a bacteria that we can expose to the mosquitoes, and it will infect the mosquitoes. Think of it like a COVID disease, okay, where it infects the mosquitoes. It doesn't kill the mosquito. COVID doesn't want to kill you. COVID wants you to live for as long as possible, because the longer you live, the longer COVID lives, right? COVID is a parasite. Parasites don't want to kill you. Unfortunately, some people die. They want to, that's exactly, they want to use you as a resource for as long as possible. COVID doesn't actually want you to die, okay? So in the same way, we have this bacteria that we can expose to mosquitoes, and it doesn't kill the mosquitoes. It will infect the mosquitoes, but it will not kill them. But there's a side effect. And the side effect is that it makes the mosquitoes sterile. What that means is that the male, it only works for male mosquitoes. The male mosquitoes cannot produce sperm, right? The male mosquitoes are not reproductive. So what we are doing with that technology is we are mass producing male mosquitoes to release into the environment. Now, male mosquitoes don't bite you, only the females bite you. But what happens is that if a female bites you but mates with a sterile male, all the eggs that she lays will not develop, right? So this is the futuristic way of controlling mosquitoes. Yeah, and it's been very successful in the countries in which they have adopted those programs.
My uncle.
Yes.
My uncle has a phobia of cockroaches. And.
Your uncle has a food what?
Phobia of, very scared of cockroaches.
Oh, a phobia of cockroaches.
Yeah. And
yeah.
my mom.
And your mom?
Is very scared of butterflies.
Of butterflies. Okay, that means they're made for each other. Are they siblings, your uncle and your mom? Yeah, yeah. Okay, there you go. Right. Okay, I think I have time for one or two more questions before I say goodbye. Anything else that you want to pick my brain on? I don't come to Thailand very frequently. Anything?
What's the best thing about this university?
What's the best thing about UQ? So I actually studied here. I'm not from Australia, I'm from Singapore. And I went to Australia to study. I think for me, the best thing is that nobody has ever said no to me at this university. So when I was a student, I asked if I could do a research project. A research project an opportunity was given to me. I asked if I could go to a certain conference. I was supported to go to conferences, right? I've never had a lack of opportunity, and I think to me, that's the best place to be in. So I've been very, very lucky. Queensland is also very growing, right? It is a growing economy, and it's still got a very small population. So as a state, the state of Queensland is only about 2.2 million people. If you compare that to places like Sydney and Melbourne, those have reached their capacity, right? There is no room for growth. The number of people there is a number of people there. So if you are if you're thinking ahead and thinking, after a university degree, I want to stay in Australia to start my career and my life, you would pick a state that gives you that opportunity. Because if you start in Sydney and Melbourne, it will get really competitive after your university degree. But places like Brisbane, like Adelaide, like Western Australia, like Perth, these are all states in Australia that are still growing, right? And so if you are thinking about after your degree finding a place where you can set up shop, you would go to one of those states, right? And that's important to think about. Okay, there's a question there.
Did you get a scholarship?
Can you get a scholarship? Or did I get a scholarship? Okay, so no, right? So no, I didn't get a scholarship to study my undergraduate degree. Okay, an undergraduate degree is the first thing you do after high school. So you do a bachelor's degree, and most places don't give you full scholarships. I got small scholarships, but I had to apply for them, right? But they are small scholarships, and they're not full scholarships. What I got a full scholarship to do was my PhD, right? So in Australia, if you get to a point where you love research and you really want to keep doing research, it doesn't have to be in science, right? You can do research in any discipline. But if you are thinking about that, you should know that nobody in Australia does their PhD without a scholarship, right? So if you know that you have got a lot of aptitude for science and research, maybe a PhD is for you, and nobody does that without a scholarship. Okay, nobody does that without a scholarship. Okay, great. I think one more question and then I say goodbye, in case any of you have any other questions. Okay, and I owe a few of you stickers, but any other questions?
How old are you?
How old am
Oh
I?
my God.
How old am I? That's a good question. I won't be offended, but I'll give you all three guesses.
28.
28. Oh, I'll take it. I will take it. I'm not 28.
36.
36. I'm not 36. At the back. 32. I'm not 32.
33.
There's only one correct answer, of course, my age. Huh? Dr. G is ageless. Is all you should know. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. But it's somewhere in the range that you all have talked about. Okay? It's somewhere in that range. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Okay? Right, stop asking me about personal information. Okay. Well done. Okay, so I'll give you back the rest of your afternoon. Thank you all very much. I definitely owe you a sticker, so come and get one from me. Okay, good. Well done, everyone. Okay, great. Enjoy the rest of your day and weekend. Okay. Good to see you.